To stop the wedding between Jason and me, his childhood sweetheart Emily deliberately fell into the water. But she didn't expect that the buckle of her life jacket wasn't fastened properly. What was meant to be a fake drowning turned into a real emergency. Jason gravely pleaded. Emily and I grew up together. I can't just stand by and watch her drown. Olivia, I know you can swim. Please help Emily. We'll be grateful. Under everyone's moral coercion, I jumped into the sea to save her. But saving someone and swimming are two completely different things. Out of fear, Emily clung to me and dragged me down with her, almost drowning me. After she was rescued, I ended up with a serious lung infection from nearly drowning and was bedridden. Jason used my poor health and the need for rest as an excuse to take away all my shares in the company. Once he gained full control, he filed for divorce. And not long after, he and Emily disappeared together. I was so furious that I coughed up blood and died. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Emily struggling in the sea. Jason was already holding on to the railing, about to jump. I silently took 2 steps back. In this lifetime, let him save his beloved childhood sweetheart himself. Someone fell into the water. Help! Save her! Help Jason! Please save me! The chaos around me grew louder. There were frantic footsteps, screams for help, and shouting. The noise snapped me back to my senses. I looked down, confused, and saw that I was wearing a white wedding dress. It was a dress I was all too familiar with, the one I had custom-made overseas just for my wedding with Jason. I had actually been reborn to the very day of our wedding. I looked up and saw a scene I recognized all too well. Emily was desperately flailing in the sea, and her life jacket, which should have been on her, was floating just out of reach. The more she struggled, the farther it drifted. As soon as Jason heard her cries for help, he dropped me, his bride, and rushed onto the cruise deck. He stepped onto the railing, about to jump in. I followed him out, and the moment I saw this, I instinctively reached out to stop him. I knew Jason couldn't swim, and was actually afraid of water. When he was a kid, he had fallen into a river and nearly drowned. I heard it was Emily who called for help and saved him. That's why he had a special kind of feeling for her. But even so, Jason still chose to hold our wedding on a cruise. Later, I found out it was Emily who suggested the cruise wedding in the first place. Even the accidental fall into the water had been planned by her long ago. Jason's mother never liked Emily and strongly opposed their relationship. Jason had gone on hunger strikes and even attempted suicide, but ultimately couldn't defy his mother. He was forced into a blind date with me. He said he loved me, but deep down the one he loved most had always been Emily. And Emily never wanted to give up on Jason either. In order to ruin our wedding, she went to great lengths, even risking her own life. She wanted to prove her importance in Jason's heart, and make me back down on my own to voluntarily call off the wedding. What a moving, passionate love story. If only they hadn't treated me and my family like fools. I might have even given them my blessing. But once Jason set his eyes on my company and saw how weak I was, he changed his strategy. Emily choked on another mouthful of seawater. The more she struggled, the more the water poured into her nose and mouth. She never expected that her life jacket would come loose. I lowered my head and sneered coldly, stepping back a few more paces. In this lifetime, not only would I not go into the water to save anyone, but I would also make sure they suffered the consequences of their actions. Jason had already climbed over the railing. Just as he was about to jump, he suddenly froze. He stared at the churning waves, and sweat instantly beaded at his temples, streaming down his face. His breathing became erratic. He leaned closer to the railing and looked around in confusion. When Jason spotted me standing behind him, his eyes lit up. Olivia, Olivia, help me up first." I saw him trembling all over. So he was still afraid after all. And to think I once believed true love could conquer time and all obstacles. "Olivia, I remember you can swim. Please." Before Jason could start using guilt again, I shouted, cutting him off. "Jason, I know you and Emily were childhood sweethearts. I know you grew up together, and I know you can't bear to watch her drown, but I'm the one you're supposed to marry. You can't even swim, and you're still going to jump in for her. Jason, have you ever once thought about how I feel? How could you treat me like this?" I was hysterical. My voice drowned out anything Jason might have said. While I was catching my breath between shouts, Emily's mother rushed over, limping as she came. She had worked as a housemaid for the Carter family. Jason's mother had passed away early, and his father was left disabled, so Emily's mother had been working for them while raising her daughter in the Carter household. She had always dreamed that her daughter would marry Jason. When I used to visit their house, she constantly played dirty tricks to embarrass me. But now, she had no time to manipulate anything. She threw herself in front of Jason and begged, "Jason, please. I only have one daughter. You've known her since she was a child. Please save her." Guests began to crowd around us, all chiming in and urging Jason to jump in and rescue her, just like they pressured me in my previous life. When they heard that the girl drowning had once saved Jason's life, they climbed right up onto the moral high ground, spouting off thoughtless comments. I put on a panicked expression, pretending to be just as helpless and worried. Jason looked at Emily, who was now barely keeping her head above the water. I noticed that someone had already called for the crew to bring out the lifeboat to perform a rescue. That wouldn't do. I let out a sigh, turned to the guests and said, "Please stop pressuring Jason. He's not the kind of man who fears death. But even if the person drowning once saved his life, that doesn't mean he should throw away his own to repay that debt." Then I turned to Emily's mother, fanning the flames. "Ma'am, don't force Jason like this. After all, he's a wealthy young master. In his eyes, your only daughter is just the daughter of a housemaid." Anger and humiliation flashed in her eyes, and the next second her knees buckled, and she dropped to the ground in front of Jason. Jason couldn't handle it anymore. Just as Emily began sinking, her strength failing, Jason gritted his teeth and turned around, trying to climb back over the railing. Not jump, but climb back. That's right. He never had the courage to actually jump in. He trembled as he clung to the railing, muttering through quivering lips, "It's not that I don't want to save her. I really can't swim. If I jump, I'll die." So he wouldn't save her himself, but he had no problem forcing others to do it. He cared about Emily's life. He cared about his own life. But the one life he never cared about was mine. At that moment, I had only one thought. He had to go down. He owed that much to the version of me from the last life. I shouted, "Jason, come back up. You're afraid of water, but I'm not. I'll go save her." But unlike last time, I didn't lift my gown and prepare to dive in. Instead, I removed the crown from my head and, using my gown as cover, charged into Jason. The sharpest part of the crown jabbed into the base of his thumb. He cried out in pain, and because his grip was already loose, his hands flinched back and his entire body fell into the sea. My gown got tangled around the railing, stopping me from climbing any farther. "Jason, don't." I reached out as hard as I could, but I couldn't grab hold of anything. Jason flailed his legs midair in a panic, then landed squarely on Emily's head. A massive splash erupted from the surface of the sea. The corners of my lips curled up just like the waves, then quickly drew back again. By now, the crew had lowered the lifeboat into the water. Under the expectant gazes of everyone on board, the lifeguards swiftly pulled both of them out. Although the cruise ship had a medical room, the doctor had taken the day off, just like in my last life, which was why I hadn't received treatment in time. But this time, it was their turn to be unlucky. I collapsed beside Jason, sobbing as if my heart were breaking. "I know you love her, but we were about to get married. How could you be so willing to throw me aside for her? Jason, if you didn't want to be with me, you could have just told me." "I'm not stopping you too," I said. "But why choose to die together at our wedding?" Those same guests who had just urged Jason to save her were now all silent. Their ears perked up, every one of them straining to catch the drama. Even the lifeguard performing CPR on Jason paused for 2 seconds. After basic emergency treatment, both of them were out of immediate danger, but still unconscious. Emily was in better shape than Jason, as she had taken the time to learn how to breathe underwater before her stunt. Jason wasn't so lucky. He was the one who truly fell by accident. He had always been afraid of water. The moment he plunged into the sea, he opened his mouth in panic and passed out instantly. Sea water filled his mouth and nose. He briefly woke up choking, only to lose consciousness again. The amount of water the lifeguard pressed out of him was enough to fill a bathtub. I watched him spit up blood-tinged seawater, then calmly wipe my nose with the edge of my wedding gown. With the groom now in that state, of course the wedding had to be called off. We were already in international waters, so we could only wait for the rescue helicopter. And I was genuinely praying for Jason now. If he died just like that, it'd be letting him off far too easy. The pain, the illness, the betrayal and humiliation I endured in my past life. This time he was going to taste every bit of it. I knelt outside the changing room for 2 hours, hair down and wedding gown dragging, looking the part of a heartbroken bride. Everyone was deeply moved by my display of devotion. Finally, the helicopter arrived and flew them both to the hospital. That afternoon, I went straight to the emergency room with my bridesmaids. Emily had passed the critical stage, but hadn't woken up yet. Looks like Jason really hit her hard when he fell. In my previous life, by this time, she had already been sobbing in Jason's arms saying, "It's my fault. I was just feeling emotional about your wedding and went out to the deck for some air." Jason had held her tightly and comforted her, saying, "It was Olivia who insisted on jumping in. She overestimated herself. No one forced her." But in this life, I stood on the outside, and Jason was still in critical condition. The moment Jason's mother saw me, she rushed over, hand raised to slap me. "If it weren't for you stealing my son, he never would have insisted on having a wedding on a cruise. He's been afraid of water since he was a child. This is all your fault. If not for you, my son wouldn't be lying in there." What a joke. It was clearly her son's idea. Yet the moment things went wrong, she needed someone else to blame. Her hand was raised high, but before it could touch me, all 4 of my bridesmaids stepped in to block her. They weren't my close friends. I had hired them specifically to keep Jason's groomsmen from messing with my real bridesmaids. But now, these 4 girls were finally proving their worth. They all pointed at Jason's reckless behavior, abandoning the wedding to jump into the sea. "Don't talk like he was being noble," one of them scoffed. The woman in the water was the groom's childhood sweetheart. Anyone could tell from the way they looked at each other that there was something fishy going on. "Exactly," another chimed in. "You're blaming the bride for being abandoned while your precious son jumped into the sea for another woman. Sounds like you're projecting your own guilt." "I've got the ship surveillance footage right here," I said calmly. "Don't even think about framing the innocent. This is a wedding." Of course, we had people filming everything. The crew standing behind me had recorded Jason sprinting to the deck, climbing the railing, and pretending he was going to jump. Then the camera panned to Emily, struggling in the water. My little move, not a single frame of it was captured. After watching the footage, Jason's parents went pale. His mother bit her lip, still unwilling to give up, and pointed at the video to question me, her voice trembling. "You were right behind Jason. Why didn't you stop him? You could have reached him." I covered my face with both hands, looking devastated and utterly worn down, crying so hard I couldn't speak. 2 of my bridesmaids knelt beside me, gently comforting me. The other 2 took a step forward and snapped, "Like mother, like son." The guys fooling around with another woman, and the moms just out here blaming people. "Did you see how determined your son looked?" one of them shouted. "Who would dare stop him? And even if someone did, would you then say we pushed him in? Are you now going to say the bride couldn't keep his heart, and that's why he jumped? The little who dragged him into this mess is lying unconscious in the room next door. Why don't you go slap her instead?" Jason's mother had clearly overestimated herself, thinking she could take on 4 women at once. She almost fainted from the rage. A nurse finally came out and sternly told everyone to stop making noise in the hospital. I glanced at Jason's mother, who was clutching her chest, clearly overwhelmed, and felt nothing but satisfaction inside. That old woman was an accomplice in Jason's betrayal. In my last life, she had frequently visited me under the pretense of checking in, only to mock and humiliate me. Back then, I was already lying in a hospital bed, barely able to move. Jason had stood at the foot of my bed, hands on his hips, scolding me like I was a useless hen who couldn't lay eggs. He said I was half dead and still dragging his son down. He even waved a photo of Jason and Emily in front of my face to provoke me. He laughed so proudly. "Look how perfect Emily and my Jason are together. They've only been back together a short time, and she's already pregnant." Such a lucky child. He had conveniently forgotten that he was the one who had firmly opposed Jason being with Emily in the first place. He looked down on Emily's mother for being a housemaid, and believed Emily was beneath them. Yet now, at the very moment he despised Emily the most, his only son had almost died because of her. I didn't stay in the hospital long. My 4 bridesmaids helped me change out of my gown. After witnessing their power earlier, I arranged a hotel for them and planned to keep them on the payroll for another 3 months. That same night, I opened a short video platform, edited footage from the wedding, and uploaded it. I paid special attention to the part where I knelt outside the changing room. The angle was perfect. Everyone who saw it said I looked like I was about to break into pieces. I even bought myself a trending topic. Then I turned off my phone and had the best sleep ever. I didn't wake up until noon the next day. I put on a bit of sick makeup, picked up the chicken soup I'd ordered through delivery, and headed to the hospital again, this time with all 4 bridesmaids. Perfect timing. Jason had just woken up half an hour earlier. Emily apparently had regained consciousness in the middle of the night. I knocked on the door to Jason's hospital room. Without waiting for a response, I barged in with the bridesmaids in tow. Jason was the only one in the VIP ward. He was lying on the hospital bed, eyes half open, staring blankly at the ceiling. He wore an oxygen mask. His bare chest was covered in ECG monitors. A blood pressure cuff was strapped to his left arm. An 4 drip pierced the back of his right hand, and both legs were wrapped in compression sleeves to prevent blood clots. Most importantly, he had a catheter bag hanging at the side of the bed, and bubbles were rising inside. The grief I had rehearsed almost broke the moment I saw that bubbling urine bag. I quickly lowered my head and covered my face, my shoulders beginning to tremble. I had to cover up. I couldn't let Jason see how pleased I was. The bridesmaids rushed forward to comfort me, acting like Jason wasn't even in the room. Jason turned his head with great effort. The moment he saw me, fury filled his eyes. He ripped off his oxygen mask and tried to sit up in anger, but he was far too weak. The movement sent him into a violent coughing fit, his face turning bright red. After struggling to breathe, he finally rasped out, "Olivia, why didn't you stop me this time?" His voice was trembling. "You should have stopped me and then jumped into the sea yourself. And you? You stabbed my hand. You made me fall on purpose." His eyes were bloodshot as he slowly lifted his injured left hand. As he said this, a chill went down my spine. Could it be? Jason was reborn too. I bit down hard on the tip of my tongue. Pain shot through me, bringing me back to the moment. When I lifted my head again, my face was already streaked with tears. "Jason, what are you saying?" I whispered. "If you hadn't jumped first, I was already going to save her. And your hand? I didn't hurt you. Maybe you hit the railing yourself and forgot. Can't remember. Maybe you were underwater too long. It messed with your head." Jason stared into my eyes as if trying to see through me. He enunciated each word carefully. "Olivia, you didn't stop me because you were reborn too. You hate me for abandoning you in the past life, so this time you want me dead." The 4 bridesmaids exchanged looks, clearly thinking Jason had been brain damaged from too much water. But I knew exactly what he was talking about. I stared back at him with clear, unwavering eyes. Not a shred of guilt in my heart. I wanted him dead, and I had every right to want that. Why should I feel ashamed? My expression was so resolute. I looked like I was taking an oath. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said flatly. Jason coughed again, shaking his head in disbelief like he was losing his mind. No. You were supposed to jump in and save Emily. Then you'd get pneumonia and I'd take care of you. You'd be so moved you'd hand over your company to me. And once you were near death, I'd dump you, marry Emily, and have a kid together." Yes, this was exactly what he did in my previous life. Everyone said he was devoted to me and never left my side, telling me I should be grateful. They had no idea his only goal was the company my parents had left me. I loved him. I trusted him. And in the end I lost everything. My money, my dignity, even my life. As for Jason, he gained both love and success. He married the woman he truly loved and lived happily ever after. Why? Why did he get to win? Jason couldn't see the hatred twisting across my face. He placed his hand on his forehead and murmured to himself, "Why would I jump in the water to save someone? Would I really end up like Olivia did in the last life? So sick it would have been better to die? No, I don't want that. I don't want to end up like that. If Olivia's still fine, how am I supposed to get her company? How am I supposed to spend her money and live a beautiful life with Emily? I regret it. I should have been reborn earlier. That way, I could have pushed Olivia into the sea myself." His resentment almost pierced through my chest. My hands clenched into fists. I was just about to lose control when the hospital door swung open. Emily was wheeled into the room. My eyes landed on her face immediately. From her left eyelid down to the corner of her mouth was a deep gash. I instantly thought of the crown, the one Jason had been holding when he fell. He must have slashed her face when he landed. So it did cut her. That $5,000 crown was worth every penny. Emily noticed my gaze, and her face twisted with rage like she wanted to lunge at me and strangle me right then and there. But she didn't even have the strength to support herself. She could only roll her wheelchair toward the bed, throw herself onto Jason and burst into tears. "Jason, you're okay, right? You scared me to death. I thought I'd never see you again." Jason was far too weak to withstand her throwing herself at him like that. He curled up like a dying fish, immediately coughing again. The catheter bag started bubbling once more. Seeing those bubbles, I wasn't even mad anymore. It felt like a weight had lifted off my chest. At least this time, I wasn't the one who ended up wishing for death. The bridesmaids wanted to step forward and tear apart the scumbag and his shameless lover, but I stopped them. No rush. Their retribution is just getting started. Emily clung to Jason's arm, still putting on a show. "Jason, you're so good to me. If you hadn't jumped in without hesitation, I might have drowned." Then she turned to me with a fake sweet smile. "Sister Olivia, I'm so sorry for ruining your carefully planned wedding. I hope you don't blame me. It's just that Jason and I have been together for so many years." I smiled and pointed at Jason's arm. It was pinned under Emily so tightly that the veins were turning bright red. "Blame you? How could I possibly blame you?" I said, and gently pulled my bridesmaid back a few steps. Only then did Emily notice. She gasped and started apologizing through tears, frantically massaging Jason's arm. I watched as Jason groaned in pain and his foreneedle bent awkwardly out of place. I hummed a little tune as I walked out and headed to the nurse's station. There, I picked up Jason's medical report. Just as expected, pneumonia. But this time, it was worse than what I'd suffered in my last life. He also had pulmonary bleeding and signs of cerebral hypoxia. Even after all the trauma and betrayal, I still managed to survive for 5 years in my past life. Let's see how long Jason can last this time. Half an hour later, I returned to the room and laid out the full details of Jason's condition. "The doctor says you suffered brain damage from the shock. Your mental capacity might be affected permanently, and your lungs. Forget about any strenuous activity. You might not even be able to get out of bed again." I deliberately emphasized the last 2 words. Useless. Sure enough, Jason couldn't take it. He clutched his head in disbelief. Jason's fingers tangled in his hair as he slowly dragged his hands downward, letting out a howl of pain and frustration. I handed the diagnosis report to his mother, who had just rushed into the room. She exploded with fury. But this time, she didn't come at me. Instead, she stormed over to the corner where Emily was sitting and slapped her hard across the face. "You filthy little. It's because of you that my son ended up like this. Damn it. Why didn't you drown instead, Emily?" Emily held her cheek in silence, tears streaming down her face, but her eyes turned toward Jason, expecting that he would stand up for her. I stood to the side with my 4 bridesmaids, watching the drama unfold. With them by my side, even if Jason's mother wanted to lash out at me again, she'd have to think twice. Jason, meanwhile, was lost in his own world. The last shred of pity he had for anyone was long gone. He muttered to himself in a daze, No, it shouldn't be like this. This has to be a dream. It's a dream. It's not supposed to be like this." Suddenly, Jason dropped his hands and tried lifting his head. He looked at me with a gaze full of longing. "Olivia, we're already married, right? Can you sell your company? Use the money to help pay for my treatment." His parents owned a chain of supermarkets, but recent years hadn't been kind to retail. Still, they could afford his treatment if they had to. But even in this condition, Jason couldn't stop eyeing my company. The room fell dead silent. Even his mother froze for a moment. Worried I might say no, Jason quickly added, "Once I recover, I promise I'll plan a brand new grand wedding just for you. I'll make sure you become the happiest woman in the world. And of course, when I'm better, I'll pay you back everything from the sale with interest." If I hadn't lived through everything in my past life, I might have been touched by his sincerity. I almost couldn't hold back. I nearly burst into laughter. Instead, I put on a conflicted expression and said, "But look at you now. How can I leave and take care of the company? I'm your wife. I should stay by your side." Jason's mom narrowed her eyes, then quickly forced a warm smile. "Olivia, sweetheart, there's no need for you to do the dirty work yourself." Then she turned and glared viciously at Emily, still crying in the corner. "Some people need to start paying for what they've done." I wholeheartedly agreed with that. Jason's mom immediately ordered Emily to stay in the hospital room and care for Jason, completely ignoring the fact that Emily was still recovering herself. She said she'd been planning to fire Emily's mother anyway, so now this would be their chance to make amends. Of course, Emily didn't want to do it, but before she could protest, my bridesmaids all eagerly stepped forward and offered to take care of Jason instead. Seeing 4 tall, beautiful women willing to stay close to Jason made Emily panic. "Jason needs me. I've taken care of people since I was little. My mom was a housemaid. I know what I'm doing. No one else needs to get involved." I sighed theatrically and reluctantly agreed to the arrangement. And so, Emily began her painful journey as Jason's full-time caretaker to stay up to date on everything happening between them. I even hired a young man with hospital connections who loved taking videos every day. He sent me clips. At first, Emily seemed thrilled. She was eager to be alone with Jason and rekindle their bond. But Jason was practically bedridden, covered in medical devices. Forget intimacy. He couldn't even roll over on his own. Jason's mom, still bitter toward Emily for seducing her son, made no effort to hire a second caregiver. Emily had to do everything herself. Feeding him, giving him medicine, staying up at night, and even changing his clothes and wiping him down. Since Jason had a cleanliness obsession, worst of all, Jason couldn't use the bathroom on his own. Emily had to take care of everything. Even though she was the daughter of a housemaid, Emily had never really done dirty or tiring work growing up. She'd been raised alongside Jason, and at most, she'd endured a few nasty remarks. But now, within just a few days, she'd visibly lost weight. She didn't dare complain to Jason's mom, so she went straight to Jason sobbing. But she couldn't say outright that she didn't want to care for him. One day, she complained her hands were getting rough. The next, she was coughing and groaning, clutching her back. Jason wasn't stupid. He understood exactly what Emily was trying to do. But the look he gave her was becoming colder and harder to read. Until one day, after changing Jason's socks, Emily finally snapped. She threw the dirty socks onto the floor and began stomping on them furiously, bursting into tears. "They're filthy. They stink. Why should I be the one doing this? I didn't force you to jump into the sea to save me. Why is everyone blaming me?" She couldn't control herself. "I was in the water even longer than you, and I didn't end up like this. Gasping from a few mouthfuls, and now lying around like you're paralyzed. You're just completely useless." Jason, already feeling miserable, finally lost it too. He grabbed the fruit knife from the table and flung it at her. A new cut opened on Emily's face. She let out a sharp, terrified scream, clutching her cheek, which immediately drew in doctors and nurses. I don't know exactly how they settled things behind the scenes, but a few days later, the videos I received showed them acting like everything was back to normal again. Still, I noticed something. In some clips, Jason looked at Emily with a dark, sinister gaze that gave me chills. Jason's mom finally hired a professional nurse to care for him. Emily no longer had to deal with those messy tasks herself. I stopped watching their drama and turned my attention to rebuilding my company. Ever since my parents died in that accident, I'd been pretty hands-off with the business. Before I married Jason, he constantly brainwashed me, telling me to stop showing my face in public and settle into a domestic role. In my past life, I didn't resist. When my health declined, I handed everything over to him. Not this time. This company was the foundation I stood on. It was everything. I started digging through my memories from the last life, trying to recall who had turned their back on me the moment I got sick. Those people were the first on my cleanup list. I was afraid Jason might recover just enough to realize I never intended to sell the company. And once that happened, he'd definitely try something. After all, he'd lived 2 lives now. The money he tricked out of me in our past life had funded his comfort and luxury. There's no way he'd just give up. So, I went in hard and purged the company top to bottom. I talked to the 4 bridesmaids. All of them came from families that favored sons over daughters. None of them finished school. They were sent off to work early. They didn't want to entertain guests anymore, but with no degrees, they struggled to find decent jobs. They all wanted to stay with me, so I brought them into the company. 2 joined the PR team, and the other 2 worked in sales. To my surprise, they actually managed to land a few deals. They were thrilled. So was I. It was a win-win. Meanwhile, Jason called me every single day to ask about the company. Maybe it was the lingering effects of his illness, but he seemed more desperate than ever to get his hands on my money. Sometimes, when I was unsure about certain senior managers, I'd casually bring them up and see what Jason had to say. He wasn't completely unaware. Now and then, he'd mention key events from our previous life, things that hadn't happened yet in this one. When that happened, I just acted confused or pretended not to remember. If I really drew a blank, I'd make an excuse or change the subject. Even when I slipped up, Jason couldn't keep track. His brain just wasn't working right anymore. Half the time, he forgot what he'd said minutes later. Sometimes I even had to remind him what he was talking about. That's how we passed the next month. Both of us testing each other, dancing around secrets. Soon, it was time for Jason to be discharged from the hospital. I drove there myself to pick him up. I arrived more than an hour early and waited outside his room. I cracked the door open just a sliver, but neither of them noticed. Jason looked pale and thin, with dark shadows under his eyes. He seemed like he'd aged 10 years. He coughed nonstop, then spat onto the floor and wiped the corner of his mouth with the back of his hand, cursing the hospital for being full of quacks. He used to be so refined, so elegant in speech and demeanor. But now he looked like a completely different person. No, this was probably who he truly was all along. Emily was sitting right next to him, feeding him slices of apple she had just cut. "Jason, can you please tell your mom to stop yelling at me? It still hurts where she hit me last time," Emily whined sweetly. Jason glanced at the marks on Emily's face, both scars left by him. Even after a month of healing, they were still clearly visible. With a look of irritation, he shoved her away. "You've got some nerve saying that. If it weren't for you, would I be in this condition?" A flash of resentment crossed Emily's eyes. I watched as she shakily helped Jason to the bathroom. His shouting soon echoed from within. "You're the daughter of a housemaid, and you don't even know how to take care of people. Didn't your mother teach you anything?" Moments later, Emily's pitiful sobbing followed. Eventually, I brought both Jason and Emily back to the Tang family home. Jason leaned on Emily like they were the loving couple while I walked a few steps behind them. As soon as we entered, Jason was surrounded by a group of people, his closest buddies. 2 of them had even witnessed the cruise incident. "Jason, we've been wanting to visit you in the hospital," one said, "but we've been swamped. Now that you're out, we thought we'd throw you a little party." Jason forced a smile and hugged each of them in turn. Whether or not the emotions were real, his performance was polished as ever. But the moment he sat down, he started coughing uncontrollably. His buddies all frowned. One of them, seated closest, quickly got up and fled to the restroom as an excuse. Jason clutched his mouth, his whole body trembling. Whether from coughing or anger, it was hard to say. After a while, he finally caught his breath and weakly asked Emily to pour tea for the guests. They all clearly knew about Jason's relationship with Emily. While they called her sister-in-law with their mouths, they were all throwing meaningful glances at her behind Jason's back. I smiled and played along. After all, I was the one who leaked the time of Jason's discharge. My plan had always been to gather his old friends here. In the kitchen, I deliberately pretended to talk on the phone. Yeah, all his friends are here. I heard a few of them come from families that own companies. Jason told me to make sure I treat them well. His parents will be coming soon with some family friends. Yes, they're going to introduce me to everyone. When I turned around, Emily had already vanished from sight. I returned to the living room with a smile. Emily was sitting close beside Jason, whispering in his ear. The moment Jason saw me, he pushed her away and took a few deep breaths. His condition had clearly left him with lingering complications. It was either coughing or shortness of breath. Olivia, I left my ID card at the hospital. I really need it. Could you go back and get it for me? His eyes darted nervously, but he insisted I be the one to go. I discreetly recorded our conversation, then smiled, grabbed my bag and left. I had just reached the front door when a delivery guy arrived with takeout. I took a glance, seafood barbecue, deep-fried skewers, and a whole list of foods that people with lung disease were supposed to avoid. There were also multiple cases of alcohol, beer, Baijiu, whiskey, everything. I smiled and drove back to my villa. Then I called the hospital and asked the nurse to help look for the lost ID card. After that, I lay down for a nap. I had a feeling tonight was going to be very exciting. 3 hours later, my phone vibrated nonstop. As soon as I picked up, chaos erupted through the receiver. Screaming, crying, shouting, things being smashed. It all tore through my eardrum. Jason's mom shrieked into the phone, her voice trembling. Olivia, where the hell are you? Get to the hospital now. Jason's dying. I took a moment to adjust my voice, making it sound just the right amount of panicked and tearful. What? What happened? He was fine when I left. She cut me off. Cut the crap and get over here. Then she hung up. This was my second time outside the emergency room. Emily was on her knees, hands clasped in prayer. Or maybe in desperation. Jason's mother stood with her hands on her hips, face red with rage. The moment she saw me, she opened her mouth to yell, but I beat her to it. What happened? I just left, and now he's in critical condition. What do you people even want from me? Are you trying to tear this family apart the moment I'm gone? My tone was so forceful it made Jason's mom flinch. She didn't dare meet my eyes. To save face, she quickly redirected her anger. She turned and kicked Emily, who was still kneeling. You were the one who ordered all that food and alcohol. You knew Jason hadn't recovered yet. Were you trying to kill him? Emily fell to the ground, revealing a fresh red handprint on her cheek. She tried to defend herself, but you and Mr. Tang were both there. Neither of you stopped Jason from drinking either. That set Jason's mom off again. She grabbed Emily by the hair and slammed her head toward the wall. I immediately stepped back, careful not to let any blood get on my clothes. Thanks to the doctor's efforts, Jason was brought back from the brink again. But this time, his mother had no intention of letting Emily anywhere near her son. She wanted me to stay and care for him instead. I refused, using the company's financial affairs as an excuse. I didn't return to the hospital again until 2 weeks later when Jason called me. His voice was so weak. He sounded like a dying old man. Olivia, why haven't you come to see me? I replied gently. I've been busy with fundraising. We're preparing to take the company public. Public? His voice suddenly spiked in pitch, triggering a coughing fit that made his lungs ache. Why would you take it public? Didn't you promise to sell the company to pay for my treatment? Do you know what the doctors told me? In my current condition, the only option is a lung transplant, but that surgery isn't fully developed yet. It's risky and requires a huge amount of money. Please, Olivia, I'm begging you. Help me for the sake of how much I loved you. I turned my head to the side and replayed the most painful moments of my life in my mind just to keep myself from laughing out loud. He said he loved me. And now that he had memories of our past life, he really knew he'd never loved me. Yet he still had the nerve to lie to my face. I told him calmly, a public company can sell at a much higher price. Jason got desperate. Come to the hospital, please. Let's talk through it in person. Of course, I had to go. The more miserable he looked, the better I felt. I grabbed a few fake documents I had prepared in advance and headed to his room. Jason looked like he'd been dried out by the wind. Thin, yellowish, lifeless. Emily was nowhere in sight. In my past life, Jason was the one who took my life. Emily was his accomplice. Jason would pay with his life. And Emily, I wasn't letting her off easy either. I asked Jason about his condition first. He stared at me with dull, cloudy eyes. I gave his bony hand a gentle pat, then pulled out the documents and opened them in front of him. Jason's eyes lit up. They're really offering $1 billion for the company. Of course they are, I said. The company's future is very promising, but the acquisition can only happen after we go public. I showed a troubled expression. But you need money now, I'm afraid. Jason gritted his teeth. It's fine. Just move forward with it. My parents still have some money, and if it's not enough, I'll have them transfer ownership of the supermarkets. They've been losing money for years anyway. That was exactly what I'd been waiting for. He was still putting on the act of a devoted lover, swearing eternal love to me. And I played right along, pretending he was the only one for me. I even said we'd have 8 kids together straight-faced. After all, we were both lying. Who was more innocent than the other? Then I changed the subject. By the way, where's Emily? I haven't seen her. You ended up like this for her. Even if your mom hates her, shouldn't she at least show some gratitude? Jason went silent. Of course, I knew the real reason. A week ago, Emily and Jason had a huge fight. Emily had threatened to sue Jason for intentional injury, because the Tang family was planning to fire her mother. I'd seen the video. Emily had thrown a fit in the hospital room, shouting, "I saved your life once, and now you're repaying me like this. We're even now. But what right do you have to fire my mom? She's old, her legs aren't good, and she won't be able to find another job. Are you trying to drive us both to death?" I gently tucked the blanket over Jason's feet. You used to be so good to him. You bought him so many luxury gifts. But the moment you got sick and needed money, he vanished. Everyone knows people in your condition shouldn't drink, and yet he ordered all that food and alcohol. Wasn't that just to humiliate you in front of his friends? Or maybe, I paused, looking him dead in the eyes. Maybe he was hoping you'd die. Jason's fists clenched tightly. Seeing my words had hit their mark, I made an excuse about company matters and left. But causing a bit of chaos with Jason wasn't enough. I wrote an anonymous report accusing his family's supermarket chain of selling expired food and failing fire safety inspections. Very soon, both the Food Safety Bureau and the fire department launched investigations. The store was fined and forced to shut down for rectification. Just as they were preparing to reopen, I reported them again, this time for tax evasion. I only meant to discuss the Tang family a little, but I didn't expect to uncover more dirt. They'd been pocketing illegal commissions, issuing fake invoices, and multiple charges stacked up. Jason's father, as the legal owner, was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The supermarket license was revoked. After a string of heavy fines, Jason was moved from the VIP ward to a regular hospital room. He started calling me frequently, begging me to cover his medical bills. I was getting tired of making up excuses. So, when he called again, I simply burst into sobs. I've been scammed by a fake investor. Jason, I'm begging you. Could you lend me the deed to your family's villa? Just as collateral. I swear I'll repay you double once I get through this. Jason, please, please. Click. He hung up without a word. I tossed my phone aside and went back to enjoying the massages and snacks the girls were feeding me. That night, the photography-loving guy I'd hired sent me another video. In it, Jason had gone to find Emily, holding out his hand. Give me some money. If not, return everything I ever gave you. The jewelry, the bags, and the house I bought you too. I can't stay in that shared room any longer. I need peace and quiet to recover. They snore and grind their teeth all night. Emily, of course, wasn't about to give anything back. She wheeled Jason toward the door. I haven't even sued you yet for slashing my face with a knife. And you dare come asking me for money? My plastic surgery costs over 100 grand. Everything you gave me is mine now. You have no right to take it back. Jason might have once been a man of status, but now sick and weak, he was no match for her. She shoved him out the door in 2 swift moves and even slapped him on the way. Get out. Don't come back or I'm calling the cops. So much for their unbreakable love. Not long after, I got a call from Jason's mom. That narrow-minded woman had finally lost her fire. She now sounded completely deflated. She begged me, as Jason's legal wife, to sue Emily and take the house back. That's marital property between you and Jason. If you file a lawsuit, that little won't stand a chance. Jason also took the phone. His voice dull and broken. I was blind. I didn't see who she really was. Olivia, help me get that house back. I just want to spend the rest of my life with you. Turns out after Jason and I registered our marriage, he bought Emily a small villa to comfort her, worth over 5 million yuan. It was my property, and I had no intention of letting anyone else have it. The day Emily received the court summons, she called me to curse me out. I could tell right away why she'd done poorly in school. Zero comprehension. So I gave her a quick crash course in legal basics, even kindly suggested she get a lawyer. After work that day, I saw her waiting outside my office with her mother in tow. The moment her mother saw me, she dropped to her knees and started wailing. Her cries quickly drew a crowd of onlookers. Please, Miss Olivia, just let us go. My daughter didn't ruin your marriage with Mr. Tang. Don't force us to die. We're begging you. People all around raised their phones to record. Emily had clearly decided to weaponize public sympathy and internet outrage against me. Jason and his mother both dropped to their knees, kowtowing to me again and again. Even when the police came to take them away, they were still rambling about their tragic life stories and how I had bullied them. Just as Emily had hoped, public opinion started to shift in her favor. But when furious netizens stormed my Weibo account, what they found were all the videos I had posted before. There was Jason, my groom, jumping into the ocean on our wedding day to save her. There was me kneeling outside the medical room, praying. Later, clips showed Jason lying in a hospital bed while Emily kissed his cheek and fed him fruit. There was even footage from the day Jason was discharged, where he asked me to fetch his ID from the hospital only to stay back drinking with his buddies and holding Emily close. And finally, there was an audio recording. It was my dear mother-in-law and my ever-faithful husband telling me, the legal wife, to sue Emily and take back the house. The internet instantly turned on her. People were outraged, calling her out for being the real manipulator. So disgusting, they wrote. And she had the audacity to cause drama at that lady's company. If I were her, I'd wrap myself in plastic wrap before even stepping outside. So the groom was cheating with her all along. That explains everything. Was she really drowning or just acting? Why isn't the guy getting any hate? He ditched his fiancée and now wants his stuff back from the other woman. I thought the mistress would at least be pretty. But this face, what was he even thinking? Thanks to all this, Emily became public enemy number 1. Some people even found out where she lived. Dead rats and pigeons were dumped at her doorstep. Her front door was spray-painted in blood-red letters. Go die. Whenever she and her mom stepped outside, people pointed fingers. Some even threatened to run them over. In a desperate attempt to gain sympathy, Emily started live streaming. She showed childhood photos of her and Jason, and told stories about their innocent youthful love. But instead of gaining sympathy, she dragged Jason down with her. So he's the real trash behind all this. People said he wanted both women. What a joke. Jason couldn't stay in the hospital anymore. People kept sneaking in to take photos or try to interview him. Even with increased security, some still scaled the walls. Patients in the same ward began complaining. Eventually, the hospital asked him to leave. After all this chaos, Jason's health declined even more. He called me, begging me to drop the lawsuit. I didn't think Emily would go that far, he wheezed. She used to be so sweet and gentle. What did you do to her, Olivia? What did you say to turn her into this? His mind seemed completely muddled, switching between rambling about our past life and whining about his miserable present. I didn't hang up. I just set the phone aside and went on with my day. An hour later, I picked it back up and heard him sobbing softly on the other end. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Where did it all go wrong? But for me, there was no way I would drop the lawsuit. The court session proceeded as scheduled. I demanded that Emily return the villa and everything Jason had given her after we were legally married. Emily had a meltdown in court and even assaulted a bailiff. She was detained for 15 days. I immediately sent people to clear out all her and her mother's belongings from the house. That same day, I put the property up for sale. By the time Emily got out of detention, the villa had already been sold. She rushed to the Tang household, trying to play the pity card with Jason again. But as soon as she started her emotional speech, Jason's eyes rolled back and he collapsed. After running some tests, the doctors advised Jason's mother to transfer him to a higher-level hospital. I secretly went to speak with one of the doctors. To my surprise, he recognized me. "So your husband's that idiot who jumped into the sea for his mistress? Damn." Then he quickly added, "I mean, sorry for your loss." He told me Jason likely had only about 3 months left to live. Of course, I didn't keep that to myself. I passed the news on to Jason's mother exactly as it was. She burst into sobs, wailing that she'd do whatever it took to raise the money to save him. I sighed and muttered, "Who knows what Emily said to Jason that made him pass out like that?" Mrs. Tang wiped her tears, her face darkening with rage, but she said nothing more. The next morning, I got a call from the police. I rushed to the station only to find out that the night before, Mrs. Tang had shown up at Emily's place with a knife and chopped off both her feet. Even Emily's mother lost an arm. When I went to visit my mother-in-law, she seemed completely unhinged. She muttered incoherently over and over again, "You shameless woman, sleeping with my husband. And then you have the audacity to let your daughter seduce my son. You filthy old hag. Your daughter is a little whore." After a psychiatric evaluation, it was confirmed she had lost her mind. I paid out of pocket to have her committed to a psychiatric hospital. Then I had my lawyer notify Jason's father, who was still in prison. After all, we were one big family. How could I keep it from him? The prison later informed us that Jason's father, upon receiving the news, lost control and got into a violent fight with another inmate. His behavior was classified as severely disruptive, and his sentence would likely be extended. Once everything else was taken care of, I went to visit Jason's hospital room one last time. His eyes had gone completely cloudy. He stared at me for a long time before he finally seemed to recognize who I was. He smiled, but tears streamed down his face. "Olivia, can you forgive me? I know I messed up. I was out of my mind. Emily, she told me I didn't have much time left. She wanted me to leave everything to her. God, I'm such a fool. I actually gave up on you for her. You trusted me so much. You did everything for me. How could I? How could I?" I smiled gently and leaned close to whisper in his ear, "Jason, do you believe in karma? Take a guess. Why do you think this life of yours turned out so miserable?" He blinked in confusion for a moment. Then his eyes suddenly widened, horror flooding his face. "You said you didn't come back. You lied to me." I laughed freely without restraint. Then I told him one by one exactly what had happened to his parents and to Emily. "If your mom hadn't gone crazy, I never would have discovered that Emily's mom was actually your dad's mistress. Can you believe it? She let the woman who ruined her marriage live in her house for 20 years. That's some next-level tolerance. I could never. Makes me wonder, is there a chance you and Emily share the same bloodline?" Jason's trembling hand reached up weakly, trying to grab me, but I stepped out of reach. "Why? I already said I was sorry. Why can't you forgive me? Why did you let me end up like this? Didn't you love me? I swear from now on I'll love only you. Let's start over. Just use your money to get me treated, please." I shrugged casually. "Too late, Jason. It's too late. The doctor already gave you a critical notice. You've only got a few days left. You should enjoy them while you can. I even thought about letting Emily visit you one last time, but she cursed you so viciously. No matter how much I tried to convince her, she refused. So much for childhood sweethearts and your great romantic love story. Not even worth a goodbye. Feeling regret now? Good. You should." Jason suddenly tried to sit up with all his strength, but he collapsed back onto the bed hard. The machines around him screeched with piercing alarms. Only when the nurses and doctors rushed in did I slowly step out of the room. A few hours later, after they had fought to save his life, the doctor came to speak with me. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said gently. "Loss of